Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
Okay, good evening and good morning. Let's continue our discussion of chapter 4, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. So today we plan to cover 2 verses. Let's see, because today we are going to cover probably the most controversial verse of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's going to be very interesting. Let's try to see the details. So we covered so far verses up to 12. So we started with the Vamsha Kathanam. We started with a statement from Krishna that the newly looking, fresh idea of Karma Yoga is nothing but an intelligent reinterpretation of the originally taught yoga. This was not created by Krishna, the blue boy of Vrindavan, but Ishvara. At the beginning of the manifestation, this idea was programmed into the intelligent order of the universe. That is the whole idea. It's not that Krishna came and taught to sun god. It only means that this was part of the universal intelligence. Just like we talked about gravity, just like we talked about any scientific laws in the universe, this is part of that universal order. But the statement of Krishna got confused, means Arjuna got confused, because Krishna appears to be his contemporary. How can he teach, or how can he program this idea at the beginning of the manifestation of the universe? So that time, Krishna took a tangent and covered a totally different topic, which was not in line with the flow of the Gita, just to answer that question, or probably to answer all of us, because to establish that authority of the teaching, probably, we don't know. Because this teaching is coming from none other than the Bhagavan. So this is the first verse, the verse or the chapter. Krishna introduced himself as an avatara. So he said, I am an avatara. You had many births. I had many births, but you won't remember your past lives. But I do remember, because I am an avatara. So we spent some extensive discussion on the difference between a conventional jiva and an avatara. A conventional jiva is born because of karma. A conventional jiva is bound by the karma at the time of birth. We had long discussion on this topic. But an avatara, a conventional jiva was forced to born here because of the karma, whereas an avatara is just, it's an initiative Ishvara has taken. He himself decided. He himself chose the body, and he was ever free at the beginning of his life itself. So that topic was introduced. And when an avatara happens, that also was introduced. He said, whenever there is a readjustment recurs in the universal order. If you translate that into modern language, this is how it comes. Whenever there is a readjustment required in that universal order, I manifest myself again and again whenever that is required. Because when this universal order means deviates from this threshold, means deviates and goes beyond a threshold, the universal intelligence will appear for a correction. That's all the avatara is. So we talked about how to look at this same idea through a religious lens and through a common man's lens. And this is the common man's interpretation. And then Krishna said, see, a jiva, as a jiva or as an individual, you're bound by karma, you're born because of karma, and you're stuck because of karma. How do you get liberated? There are 2 ways. in the second chapter and third chapter, he said, know yourself. An alternate way is, instead of knowing yourself, you can know the Ishvara. Janma karma cha me divyam. So those who know me, meaning Ishvara, in its essence, he used a word, tattva, if you remember, not superficially, not his stories, but who I am in my essence. That is the word tattva indicates. So that if you know me, that means you will cross this bondage of karma. Because at that point of time, we paused and we reviewed the tattvamasi. You can know the water either by knowing the wave, or you can also know the water by knowing the ocean. If you know that the essence of the wave is water, the same essence is the essence of the ocean also. So either by knowing the essence of the ocean or by knowing the essence of the wave, you know water. Just like that, by knowing the essence of the individual, which is nothing but the Atma, or the essence of Ishvara, which is nothing but the Atma, it's the same. And then he said, okay, if knowing me is your goal, how do you know me? He gave the entire Gita summarized in one verse. Vita raga bhaya krodha means with an emotionally intelligent mind. Man mayā means mind completely absorbed in me in meditation. Entirely surrendering up to me. This is the karma yoga, upasana yoga. Then Bhagavo jnana tapasa puta matbhavamagataha. So that brilliant verse. Once you do this karma yoga, upasana yoga, meaning surrendering to me, having emotionally intelligent, the mind getting absorbed in me, that way the mind becomes stable and quite clean. With that mind, if you pursue the path of knowledge as a discipline, as a tapas, you will come to me. And he said, matbhavamagataha. You don't come near me. You don't come to my loka, or you don't come to my territory. No, you become me. Matbhavamagataha. And not just one or two people. He used the word bahavaha. He paused and said, he didn't say anekaha. Aneka technically means it could be only two. That is why explicitly he used bahavaha, that word. So many people came to me. And then how do you know me? How do you connect with me? Is there any particular form? Or is there a particular name? Or is there a particular ritual? That's why Krishna went ahead and categorically said, right? Whosoever comes to me in whatsoever form, I will accept them in that way. That was the verse we saw, right? That's brilliant. And any worship is dear to me. But a lot of people, they don't want to reach this highest goal. Their goal is only material benefits. Just like a child. If you ask a child if you need $1 million or a balloon, the child may choose the balloon. Because at that mindset, what is important to him is what is pursued. And I bless them with that. So if you sincerely pursue for wealth, you will be blessed with wealth. If you sincerely pursue for health, you will be blessed with health. So the whole idea is given. Whatever you pursue, just like a father grants a child with a balloon or a toy, the intent of the father is not to make the child an expert in playing with the balloon. But he knows that desire, let that be exhausted. That's the whole idea. So a revolutionary teaching is given. And now Krishna wanted to say that, right? Who he is, that is what he is explaining. Who he is and who he is not. So he said that, okay, I am in the world, right? The whole world is governed by me. The whole world is managed by me. I run the whole show. But in my essence, I am completely indifferent or separate from the world. Just like when you take the Swapna Drishtanta, the whole dream world is governed by you, the person, the dreamer. It was created by him. The laws that governs the dream world is created by me. It exists in me. I control everything. But in my other order of reality, right, in that transcendent form, I'm completely separate from it. So he wanted to say that, and for that he used one example. And that example, it just took the attention of all these people. And it created a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of confusion among the honest seekers. Even those who do not know about Bhagavad Gita, even those who didn't read Bhagavad Gita, a lot of modern activists, they know this one verse. Not one verse, only one line of that one verse. And they use this as a means to criticize Gita. This is one side. And the other side, the so-called priest class, they use this verse as a sanction to practice a hierarchy in the society. Both have to be understood. But in reality, this verse talks completely different thing. So we need to understand this verse properly so that this idea is understood. So please pay attention. This verse is very important. Not because of the content. The content is nothing much because compared to the other verse, because this verse is completely misinterpreted. So let's try to understand this controversial verse of Bhagavad Gita, which is verse 13 of chapter 4. So Anu, could you please chant?
cāturvaṇyaṃ mayā sṛṣṭaṃ guṇakarmavibhāgaśaḥ tasya kartāramapi māṃ viddhyakartāramavyayam.
Cāturvaṇyaṃ mayā sṛṣṭaṃ guṇakarmavibhāgaśaḥ tasya kartāramapi māṃ viddhyakartāramavyayam. This is the verse. And just for informational purpose only, those who use this verse to criticize Gita, they know how much. They quote only one portion of this verse. Cāturvaṇyaṃ mayā sṛṣṭaṃ. That's all they know. They conveniently omit or deliberately omit the second part. So that's point number one. And if you really look at the tatparya or the direction of this verse, it is the second portion of this verse. So let's see the second portion of this verse first, and then we'll come back. So he tells, tasya kartāramapi māṃ. Even though I am the author of this grouping of the society, then he said, viddhyakartāramavyayam. In essence, I don't do anything. Right? So think through this because we are going to see this in detail. Just understand that this is the idea of this verse. He wanted to say that even though I am there in the immanent world, in my transcendent nature, I am completely separate from the immanent world. I am not creating any problem in the immanent world. I am not responsible for anybody's action in the immanent world. So this is what he's trying to tell us. And for that, he used an example. That example is, let's see, cāturvaṇyaṃ mayā sṛṣṭaṃ. First of all, it's not caste. Caste is jati. Here it is varnyam. Varna is different from jati. So first of all, anybody who should know the basic Sanskrit should know that. Jati is different from Varna. First of all that. So the fold grouping of the society is means created by me. How did I group the society? He didn't say guṇakarmavibhāgaśaḥ. If it was by birth, he would have said guṇakarmavibhāgaśaḥ. Don't we know that Krishna knows that much Sanskrit? So he didn't say that. He said, how this dicing and slicing of the society happens. It is based on two factors. One is the content of my mind. Second one is the action I do. The guna and karma only based on guna and karma. This classification, it's not a hierarchy, it's only a classification. I created that classification based on guna and karma. Then the next part he said, even though the rule of that classification comes from me, I am unaffected by that. I'm not putting a particular person into a group. I'm completely different from that. I can say that I created the dream. But am I part of that? Means in my transcendent nature, like let's say that there is a flood happens in my dream and I'm drowning. Anything happens to me in the me lying on the bed? Nothing, because these are two orders of reality. So this is the idea he is trying to communicate. And a lot of commentators spent pages after pages on that first sentence. But in fact, the second sentence is the tātparya or the direction of this verse. So now, since there is a lot of controversy over this verse, let's try to understand a little bit deep into what is this cāturvaṇyaṃ and what is this guṇakarmavibhāgaśaḥ division. So if you understand that correctly, there should not be any confusion over the caste system or the hierarchy. So let's see. So a lot of you work in IT industry, right? One of the basic thing you do in data science or data analytics is what? You have, means your company's asset is your raw data, but the raw data by itself is useless. If you go to an executive with thousands of millions of rows of spreadsheet, it's useless. So what do?
Process and filter. You
do some dicing and slicing of the whole thing and present it into certain groups or categories. Isn't it? That is how the whole management theory works. The whole data will be comprehended and classified and analyzed. How can you dice and slice the data? Based on the purpose, right? So you have a pool of data and you do a particular dicing and slicing. For example, if marketing is your objective, you do a dicing and slicing to support the marketing job. If something else is, if like the customer support is your goal, your dicing and slicing would be different. But what we need to understand is, whenever you have a pool of data, segmenting, viewing, and understanding the data is critical component in information management. If you take any book on data science, the first chapter would cover this. Understanding your data, because when you understand the data, only that data becomes information. So you need to dice and slice the data. You need to interpret the data properly. So the Vedic tradition groups the entire humanity, because suppose you want to prescribe certain practices and certain style or certain way of life for certain categories, certain number of people, you need to understand what is good for. I cannot say that 1.4 billion people, I cannot create a particular practice, each practice. So the entire humanity is looked at holistically and created a category, fourfold category. And this categorization, please note that this is not by birth. This categorization is done based upon mental temperaments. I'm not making it up. Look at the previous words, guna and karma. So mental temperaments or the mental contents determines which category you belong to. And the intent of this classification, right, the cāturvaṇyaṃ, is not to say that, okay, create a hierarchy. It's only to prescribe appropriate practice for your own development. This was not a hierarchical society at all. This was not a hierarchical society. I'm going to quote the actual scripture and show you that. So this was the intent. And one more point is, what is varna? If you go to any Sanskrit dictionary, the word varna has multiple meaning, like 3 or 4 meaning. But the most obvious meaning is what? Color. So now you think that, okay, people started interpreting it as color of the skin. Absolutely not. It refers to the color of the mental temperaments. Now you need to understand, since those who study the Yoga Sutra understands very well, the mind or chittam of an individual, the content of the mind, per the Yoga Sutra or per the Sankhyan model, do you know, right? What are all the contents of the mind is classified into 3, if you remember. And they are sattva, rajas, and tamas. So let's say that at a given point of time, if I take your entire content of your mind, that content means some of that content would be sattva, some of that content would be rajas, and some of that content would be tamas. Because sattva contents means it keeps the mind into the natural state. It helps you to follow dharma. It creates a calm, peaceful mind. The content of the mind, what is stored in your mind. And the Sankhyan philosophy or the Sankhyan school tells that the color of the sattva is white. So it's a shweta varna. Then some of the contents of the mind is called rajas. It makes you a little bit stressed, but it gives you the energy to do something, because sometimes you need that hyper energy to go and get something. A classic example is when the fire alarm rings, what happens? You can see that the cortisol, adrenaline will pump into your blood. It will trigger your sympathetic nervous system. So that becomes rajas becomes active. Do you need rajas? Of course you need rajas. You need all the 3. So rajas means it makes you a little bit of hyperactive, right? It gives you a little bit agitated. It will give you a little bit stressed, but that is also required to live the life. And Sankhyan philosophy or the Sankhyan vision, Sankhya Darshana, assigns a color to rajas, red. So sattva is white, rajas is red, and then there is a third category, which is tamas. Tamas, the color assigned to the tamas is black. And what is tamas means it takes you slow down completely. So one is inactive, it means no activity, inactive state. If you want to get sleep per the Sankhyan model, tamas has to be there. Of course, the sattva and rajas will be there, but the tamas layer will predominate, means permeate, means it will cover you, then only you get sleep. So every human being, their mind is a combination of this sattva, rajas, and tamas. Now, how many permutation combination you can make from these 3 sattva, rajas, tamas? A simple example. How many primary colors are there? 3. From that 3 primary colors, how many colors you can make? Millions of colors. Millions of colors, right? 0 to 255 red. 0 to 255 white. Means what means the red, yellow, and the blue, right? Or green. I don't know. I forgot. So whatever it is, RGB, right? Red, green, blue. So 0 to 255, 0 to 255, 0 to 255. That is the combination. Millions of colors you can make. Like that, what would be your combination of your mental content at a given point of time? Sattva, a proportion, rajas another proportion, tamas another proportion. So millions of permutations and combinations are possible for humanity. Every human being, the bare mental constitution would be different. The guna would be different. The sum total of the guna or the aggregate guna would be different. And that aggregate guna would be a combination of the proportion of sattva, rajas, and tamas, and different permutation and combination. So what here, why the classification is required? That is why I'm telling. The cāturvaṇyaṃ literally means classification of these colors. What is the color we are talking? It is the color of your mental temperaments or the content of your minds. The different permutation and combination of the sattva, rajas, tamas can be categorized into 4. So that doesn't mean that one category, everybody has same temperament. It's a threshold, right? So you can say that between X to Y, it falls into one category. Between Y to Z, it falls into another category. Between another combination, it falls into another category. So individual to individual, it would be different. But on a grouping, right, that is where the categorization and grouping will come. So this content of the chitta, based upon the predominant tendencies of the chitta, for simplicity, this is classified into 4. So now you should understand why the cāturvaṇyaṃ, the word came varnyam. It is not based on the skin color. It is based on the sattva, rajas, tamas tendencies of your mind. So this is very important. And the people criticize, or the people who try to take advantage of this, neither of them doesn't know any of these things. That is why this is basic Sanskrit, and the basic commentary, if you read, this is what you get. I don't know how creative people are in creating like nonsense. So now let's see the cāturvaṇyaṃ. So this, based upon the content of the mind, you group them into 4. And the first category is known as Brahmana. Unfortunately, the word has misused and abused. We may have to come up with some new names, because the moment you say Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, different meanings comes to people's mind. Probably we should use some XYZ, something like that. Otherwise, this is confusing. But just for the understanding, understand. So Brahmana category means the content of their mind will be more dominated by sattva. The majority will be sattva, followed by rajas, and followed by tamas. A Brahmana doesn't have tamas? No, he has tamas. But the sattva will be large. I'm just making it up. Maybe 60% or 70% sattva, around 30% rajas, 10% tamas. That means it's not exactly like that. As I said, like the permutation and combination could be very much. And such people, it is found that those who are more dominant in sattva, followed by rajas, such people, you can say that they are creative thinkers, they are excellent teachers, they are R&D professionals, great artists. All this comes into this category. Is it only to India? Everywhere in the world you can see this category. So Lord Buddha, who is supposed to be a big critic of the so-called caste system, he praised this quality. So in Dhammapada, the Buddhist scripture, you can see a portion called Brahmana Varga. One chapter on the Brahminhood, the Brahmanahood. That means a person, exactly the same teaching is given by Lord Buddha. So this is what it is. Now, Kshatriya. Who is a Kshatriya? Kshatriya means rajas will be predominant, followed by sattva, followed by tamas. So he is hyperactive, but since the driving force behind that is sattva, not tamas, he works for the welfare of everybody. They can be good leaders, they can great social workers, all such people, and even great leaders of the community. Even some spiritual masters, you can see rajas in them. For example, Swami Chinmayananda, he was sattva, but you could see that fire in him. That is rajas. So this is rajas followed by sattva, followed by tamas. They are ideal professionals. Professions are leading, leadership, protection of the people, great leaders, etc. Now Vaishya. Vaishya category means rajas again will be dominated, But the second predominant quality is tamas. Again, they are hyperactive. They work 24/7, but for whom? For themselves. And they don't mind using a little bit of tricks and unethical things. So typically, they are business people. And finally, the categories of people where tamas is predominant, followed by rajas and minimum sattva. They are lazy people. They cannot do any creative activity. They need to be driven. You need to instruct them to do what is to be done. So that is the means another category. So now what other permutation combination is possible? Can you ask like sattva followed by tamas? That will not happen. Because if sattva is predominant, if sattva goes beyond, tamas will not come second naturally, because they won't stand together. That is why that combination won't come. And if tamas is predominant, sattva won't come as the second. So that's why it's cāturvaṇyaṃ, not sixfold. Please understand this. This is what the commentators clearly tells. This is cāturvaṇyaṃ. First part. Now, second part. Let's say that somebody is of Brahmana character, guna-wise. Now, if you put that person into a Kshatriya's role, what is going to happen? Let's say an Yeshudas, a great singer, meaning I don't want to use anybody's name. Then you may say that, okay, he's business-minded. I don't want to say that. Let's say that a pure devotion, because this is how people deviate from the topic. Let's say that a saintly person. Suppose you put him as the head of an institution. It will fail. And on the other hand, suppose you put a Vaishya-minded person, Rajas, dominated by tamas and sattva. Let's say that you put him as a priest of a temple. That is what you see now. Very soon the temple will flourish. He will make a lot of money. That's what happens. And now, if you put a Shudra category, right? He is tamas, but rajas and sattva as the head of a country. Nothing will happen. If you put a Brahmana category as the like the head of the army, again it won't work. So what Krishna is saying is that for your own spiritual development, you need to understand your swadharma. And depending upon your mental temperaments, take the appropriate profession. This is not a Vedic idea alone. The modern science and the modern psychology talks about that. Anybody read the book Atomic Habits? That book has a brilliant example. Anybody remember that? Like a swimmer and a marathon runner. Let's say that your height is too much. He may not be good for a runner. Even if you train yourself, you may fail. So understand what exactly is the playground matches with your profession. He uses a word explore and exploit. Typically, people don't pick the right profession which is aligned with their own swadharma. So that chapter of Atomic Habit can be considered as a modern interpretation of this swadharma. And this is given in many books, depending upon your taste. If you put Sachin Tendulkar as like a medical doctor, it won't work. So this is very important to understand. Understand which category you belongs to, whether it is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And if you select, it is your choice. Nobody can force you that. If you select a profession aligned with your mental temperament, the probability of growth is higher. You feel that the work becomes a flow and it is going to be very helpful for you. And if you take a profession not aligned with your temperament, it may not help you. But such combinations can happen. One classic example, Swami Dayananda quote in his book is, those who are from Tamil Nadu, you know, right, these Nayars, the 64 Nayars in the Chidambaram temple. They were by birth, they were considered as low caste people by the foolish society. But their mind was Brahman type of mind. But the society forced them to do the job of a Shudra. So even though they were mentally Brahmana, they were doing as Shudra. But eventually what happened? Lord himself came and asked them to put them into the temple. Srinarayana Guru of Kerala. By birth, he was a low caste, so-called low caste. But if you really look at the greatness of glory of the Guru, he is in par with Shankara. So this is what we need to understand. This is not by birth, it is by the mental temperament. And when based on your mental temperament, if you take the appropriate profession, the possibility of growth is higher. But again, Krishna's goal is not to talk about cāturvaṇyaṃ at all. He said, in the society, you can see the different temperament of the people, and based upon the temperament, that means certain jobs are good for them. Yes, it is part of the universal order. And as Ishvara, I am the order. But in my transcendent nature, I am completely separate from them. So he only wants to show that. But the word cāturvaṇyaṃ caught the attention of a lot of people, and they started misinterpreting. So please understand, Varna is not caste. Caste, the definition is Jati. Jati is different from Varna. Jati means by Janma, by birth. Varna means color. And what is the color? It is the color of the mental temperaments, not the color of the skin. And I just showed you why, from where the temperaments came in. It is from the Sankhyan metaphysics. Very incidentally, we studied the Yoga Sutra, the same thing last week. So it might be resonating you, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, especially the second sutra's commentary. Maharshi Vyasa tells, Chittam hi trigunam, prajna pravritti sthiti shilatva, like Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And the permutation and combination of everything is the entire universe. So now the question is this static? At a given point of time, let's say that I am Vaishya. That means, am I stuck as a Vaishya forever? No. The moment my mental the content of my mind changes, what happens? I move to the next level. On the other hand, somebody can be a Brahmana now. He can go down also. So both way, it is possible. So that's the next point. So we talked about that. So this grouping is based on Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. All people come under this 4 category. But within that category also, there is subcategory, right? As I said, like the permutation and combination can be many. So everybody means this is just an order or a grouping. And the probability of the progress is higher when one takes the profession aligned with mental temperaments. That doesn't mean that somebody born in a particular family, he has to follow the same karma. That's not the idea. Because in one family, that is the explanation. In one family, potentially, let's say that 4 children are there. One can be a Brahmana, The other can be a Kshatriya, the other can be a Vaishya, other can be a Shudra. So that's very important. And finally, you cannot say that one profession is good, the other is bad. A Shudra's job is as good as a Brahmana's job. So there is no hierarchy. What happened was, in between, somebody started misinterpreting it, and the priest class used this for their benefit. And unfortunately, in the name of this so-called caste system, so much atrocities were done in our country. The most worst place was Kerala, as far as I know, which forced Swami Vivekananda, when he visited Kerala, which forced him to call the particular region of Kerala as lunatic asylum. Lunatic asylum, that's what he called. But immediately after Kerala, right? So it is described in Swami Vivekananda's biography. Somebody met him, and Dr. Palpu, he was the name of the person. He said, like, how to fix this? This Dr. Palpu was a doctor, but he was not allowed to practice because he came from a so-called low caste. So Vivekananda said, the best way is there will be somebody from this low caste community come, so-called low caste community come, who would be a spiritual teacher. Exactly as is predicted, Srinarayana Guru came in. And Srinarayana Guru revolutionized the whole teaching. He wrote 66 great composition on Advaita Vedanta, in par with Shankara. So his Atmopadesha Shatakam, his Bhashyam on Ishavasya Upanishad, several books, Darshanamala, whatnot. So the whole idea is he enumerated this so well, so clearly. So this is very important to understand Varna system. Coming down, as I said, right, it can change. The ultimate goal of everybody is moksha, and moksha, but based upon the Varna type, Vaishya is Rajas, Tamas, Sattva, Shudra is Tamas. Oh, I made a mistake. It should be Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva. It's just copy mistake. Kshatriya is Rajas, Sattva, Tamas. And you can see, depending upon your progress or the way you behave, your contents of the mind will change. Based on that samskara, your classification can also change. Modern day priest, you can see them drinking and indulging in all activities. Practically, they go down. But a person like a Kannappa and all, like with the prayer, they can go up. Bhunaji is there actually. 3 weeks back, she did a great function honoring these 64 saints. They all came from that so-called low part of the community, but with their karma, by the purity of their mind, they raised to the sainthood. Bhunaji, you can, if you want, you can comment a couple of sentences, because 64 people were there, right? 64 saints.
No, it's okay. There were 63 9 Mars, they were
Right.
called. They all came from different sects, different castes.
Yeah.
They were all from the washerman place, and some people were from the agricultural, it was all from different castes, but they all attained moksha because they had parida bhakti for Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva came in their life and tested them. Every one of them got tested, and he took them with him. That was the thing. He gave darshan, and he took them with him. So it's a beautiful thing. So Lord Shiva says that if you worship even the people who are worshipping Shiva, that itself is like worshipping him.
Exactly. So this is the tradition. So people don't follow and understand. I call this out because Swami Dayananda calls this particular incident in his commentary of this verse. So he tells, right, they are, if you go by birth, they are Shudras, but practically their mind was Brahmanas, better than a lot of other Brahmanas. So this is very important to understand. And then this temperament, right? So
one request, Rajeshji.
Sure.
The previous slide, the words are too small. I mean, I'm old, so
Okay. Yeah. We can.
So if you can just make it a little.
Yes, absolutely. I'll keep that in mind next time. Sure. So I can explain that, right? So here Brahmana type means it will be Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. That is the order. Whereas a Kshatriya, Rajas will be predominant. Actually, it is there here also. So this is what it is, exactly in a pictorial form. Brahmana means it is Sattva dominated, followed by Rajas and Tamas. Kshatriya means Rajas dominated, Sattva dominated, means Tamas. Then Vaishya is Rajas, followed by Tamas. So Kshatriya and Vaishya, there is a difference. Both of them are hyperactive, but Kshatriya will use that skills and leadership for the entire benefit community, whereas Vaishya uses the same skills and technique for himself. So one is a businessman, the other one is a community leader. That's the difference. Why we get confused is now, if you really look at the politician, he might be belonging to a Vaishya caste, Vaishya's mental temperaments. Instead of lifting the country, uplifting the country, his focus is lifting himself. So there is no problem with the cāturvaṇyaṃ. The problem is the misinterpretation and how we utilize it. I mean, how it was practiced. So this is very important. And Krishna clarifies that. And people twisted the whole thing and conveniently keep that second portion silent. guṇakarmavibhāgaśaḥ. So that's what. So this is like this guna and karma gives you an opportunity to climb up or fall down. That's very important. If you practice karma yoga, aligning with your swadharma, you will grow up. Imagine, like, forget about the varnashrama dharma. Let's imagine a highly, like, there is a modern classification, I forgot. In the leadership styles, they call analytical, and there is another category called just go and getters. I forgot that name. That is the same the classification. So if you put an analytical oriented person and a highly R&D oriented person into a like a gas station job, yeah, he may do that for a living, but he will not find enjoyment. The work itself is going to be monotonous. The way you need to understand is, right, when you do your job, you feel that flow, like you forget it, and the work you enjoy. That means this is your profession. And I strongly recommend that book, Atomic Habits. In that one chapter, you understand there is beautiful modern examples given. A lot of examples are given, pretty much aligned with this swadharma. Now, one more point. Then you may ask, right, where exactly is the scriptural sanction? How do you say that Krishna is right? Caste system is different. That's not what it meant. So everywhere you have to go back to Upanishad and find a proof. So let's talk about one Upanishad, just to remove everybody's confusion, right? Vedas, the source, clearly tells who is a Brahmana. There is one Upanishad exclusively dedicated for this Varnashrama Dharma. And that Upanishad, nobody talks about that Upanishad conveniently. That's the problem. That Upanishad is known as Vajra Suji Upanishad. Have you heard of that? It's a very famous, it's people don't quote that, because then all these truth will come out. So the Upanishad name is known as Vajra Suji Upanishad. But before that, Varna is not caste. Varna is not the evil practices of the caste system. Varna doesn't discriminate human being from one another. Varna is not determined by birth. Like profession is secondary, right? Or religion or nationality. Caste, the word, let's not use it, because I see a lot of people using the translation of this word as caste. It is not, because the caste is a word came from the Portuguese language. Casta, it means it's a breed or a race. That has no connection with dharma, the word varna. The closest word for the caste is jati. So a jati brahmana is not a real brahmana. A real brahmana is a guna brahmana. Jati doesn't have anything. Okay, some people misused it, abused it by enforcing a hierarchy. Two misunderstanding is, one is this is not by birth, and this is not even this grouping, right? Even based on the mental temperaments, there is no hierarchy. One is not higher, the other one is lower. These are the two misunderstandings. Just to make it clear, the Purusha Sukta, the famous hymn on Vishnu, right? Sahasrashesha Purusha, that famous hymn, it talks about that all the varnas are part of Ishvara. So the thinking class, or that Brahmana, is the face of the Lord. The arms of the Lord means execution. That is the Kshatriya. Thighs of the Lord, because that is what is sustaining everybody, right? The thighs, the energy, right? That is the traders and the supporters. And finally, feet. Feet is what is executing final execution. So that is the thing. So Purusha Sukta calls about that. But at the end, Purusha Sukta concludes that all these groups are Ishvara, Vishnu. So how can you say that? And when you worship Vishnu, most of the people worship the feet. So let's make sure that this wrong idea of caste system is going from our mind, and let's understand it correctly. Again, this was a complete tangent. We were forced to explain this, even though this was not in the flow of the Gita, because this was always misinterpreted. Now let's go to the actual definition of Brahmana, or all the karma. This is defined by Vajrasuji Upanishad. Vajrasuji Upanishad is part of Samaveda. So the whole Upanishad says, what determines the state of Brahmanahood? It tells, is it Jiva? Then the Upanishad says, no, Jiva is not what determines the Brahmanahood, because the Jiva transmigrates, and you can see that it varies. So it is not Jiva. Is it the body? Upanishad tells no, because the body is made up of 5 elements, and every body is made up of 5 elements. So that is not what is determined the Brahmanahood. Is it by birth? The Upanishad asks. Again, it tells no, because this you have to read. Most of the saints in our tradition, they are not born Brahmins. The Upanishad gives 6 or 7 examples. Vyasa. Who is Vyasa per the caste? Fisherman. He is the son of a fisherwoman. Who is Vatmiki? Tribal. And from where Agastya was born? Anybody knows? From a port. Kumbha Sambhava. That is what is Agastya. I'm just quoting what exactly the Upanishad calls out. So Agastya, one great saint. In South, in Tamil and all, Agastya is considered as a greatest saint. He was born of Kumbha. He's not a Brahmin by birth. Then Vyasa is not a Brahmin by birth. The one who compiled the Veda, the one who composed Mahabharata. And Vatmiki is not a Brahmin by birth. Lord Krishna himself is not a Brahmin. That is, Upanishad is not calling him out, but I'm just telling. Lord Krishna is not a Brahmin by birth. Who is Lord Krishna, by the way, if you follow the caste hierarchy? Yadava. And Yadava is whom? OBC. If Krishna lives here in the modern world, he is eligible for reservation. That is not, he is OBC. So that's it. So you can say that these are the people who built this culture. And then Rishyasringa. The Upanishad calls out Rishyasringa. You know who is Rishyasringa? The son of the sage Vibhandaka. It's mentioned in the Mahabharata. The Vaishali story. Those who watch that movie also, you can know Vaishali, the story of Vaishali. He does this ritual that because of that the rain comes in. That's a beautiful story in the Mahabharata. And also he is the one who did the Putra Kameshti for Dasharatha. Because of that, Rama was born. Who is the mother of Rishyasringa?
Deer.
Deer, exactly. So again, not a Brahman by birth. And then Jambuka. He was born from a jackal. So the Upanishad tells, birth, nobody becomes a Brahman. Is it theoretic knowledge? No. The Upanishad tells there are so many people who can do the Veda Parayanam, but they don't understand anything of the Veda. A parrot can chant the Veda if taught, but so mere knowledge is not the Brahmanhood. Karma, no. Because as I said, like these Nayars and a lot of people. In the Upanishad, there is an example. A butcher is considered as like a self-realized person in one of the Upanishad. You know that. So these are some of the, this is how the Upanishad talks. And then who is a Brahmana? The Upanishad clearly answer. The Brahmana is the one who experienced the truth. Or people who are in the path of self-knowledge are also can be called as Brahmana. So the two definition given is Sattva dominated mindset. And if they pursue Swatik karma, they are the Brahmana. So this is the Shruti. This is the Vedic definition. So anybody wants, go and just check this Upanishad. Vajra Suji Upanishad. This is part of the Samaveda. The reason why I quoted Shruti is just to show you that this is the truth. This is misinterpreted. And this Upanishad, it discussed the 4 Varnas in detail, exactly like what we discussed earlier. And this is a spiritual, means this is a spiritual defense against this evil of caste system that was followed in our society. So this is what the cāturvaṇyaṃ, and then let's go to Ishvara's rule. This is the real talparya of the Ishvara. Ishvara said, this mental temperament, the division of the mental temperament, and which profession is suited for that such mental temperament is part of the universal order. So in that sense, you can say that I am the author of this Varna Dharma and Ashrama Dharma. But in my true essence, I'm completely away from that, because this rule is applicable only in the immanent world. We need to understand the world is immanent and transcendent. So in the transcendent world, this doesn't matter. So even though you can consider me, these are my rules, but I'm unaffected by that. So this is what he is going to highlight in the next few words. How should one do the karma? Because you need to understand who you are. You are not the body, mind, or the rules governing that body and the mind. You are completely outside of that. So I am unaffected, I am impartial, and I am unattached. Tasya kartāramapi viddhyakartāramavyayam. This is the essence of this verse. Yeah, I know we took 1 hour to explain this, but this needs an explanation. So we can stop here we'll continue next week, and then we can go to the Q&A. But before that, Anu, if you, or Bhunaji, if you could do the Purnamada invocation, then we will go to the actual Q&A.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shantis Shantis Shantihi. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.